So what do you do when life gets you down, when you're face down and it feels like life has its foot on your neck and there's no getting up? I've been thinking about many people in my life and times in my life when being really, really down. It got me thinking in the scriptures today. We're going to do this a little different today. No fancy graphics flying around the screen or AI-generated video clips. Just me talking to you, reading this passage we're going to look at today, hopefully encourage you. But thinking about those times when we get us down, I was thinking about people in the Bible who would be the nominees for the most depressed person you see in the scriptures. Usually Job would be a name that comes to mind, all the things that went through his experience, relationship with his wife. He didn't know what this tragedy that had fallen on him was all about. He didn't have the behind-the-scenes picture of what God was up to. David also, there's many times in the Psalms where we see his anguish, we see his depression, we see the oppression of his enemies. You could probably pick out some others. There was times when Paul seemed quite low and so forth. But when you think about it, I want to take you to Jeremiah, an often overlooked book of the Bible. It's quite lengthy, as you probably know, 52 chapters long. And he went through all sorts of things. God gave him a message. God told him, I want you to get this, your purpose is to deliver this message, and it's not a good message. It's just that Judah is going to fall. It took place about 700 years or so before the time of Jesus. And he says, you know, time's up. They have so sinned and turned their back on me. I'm going to punish them for 70 years in Babylon. Of course, the leaders of the country didn't want to hear that. The people didn't want to hear that. They wanted to hear good news, quote unquote. And they just rejected him. They mistreated him. They devalued him. They arrested him. They persecuted him. And by the end of the book, he's a broken, lonely man. He's been carted off against his will to Egypt. And in chapter 3 of Lamentations, somewhere in that time frame, he sits down and writes, and actually the whole book of Lamentations. Now, when I get kind of down, I get quiet. I kind of pull in and I don't want to talk to people, I want to kind of be alone. And some folks express it, and he certainly had a poetic bent. And I want you just to listen for a moment of his words of anguish. And it's very picturesque, it's very powerful, it's very raw, and maybe we can relate to some of these thoughts. I'm a man, this is verse 1, Lamentations 3. I'm going to take a drink first. Now I'm ready to read. I'm a man who has seen affliction by the rod of his wrath. He has led me and made me walk in darkness and not in light. Surely he has turned his hand against me time and again throughout the day. And he's kind of thinking about what God has brought into his life. Listen to this. He has aged my flesh and my skin and broken my bones. He has besieged me and surrounded me with bitterness and woe. He has set me in dark places like the dead of long ago. I don't know about you, but I'm already feeling down. I just feel like we should dim the lights, you know, and get a little bit of fog in the room and just kind of get that feeling. It's really down. Let me skip a little bit further down to verse 16. He has also broken my teeth with gravel. Oh, you just kind of can feel what that emotion is like to be able to compare it to, you know, like grinding your teeth on gravel. What a horrible thing. You've moved my soul far from peace. I'm so far from peace, I'm not even in that same zip code. I can't even relate to that anymore. I have forgotten prosperity. I've forgotten what it feels like to have enough stuff to live on. And I said, my strength and my hope have perished from the Lord. Remember my affliction in roaming, the wormwood and the gall, which were very bitter substances. My soul still remembers and sinks within me. This I recall in my mind. So he's really, really down. So there's lots of things to get us down. It's how other people treat us. We can focus on that. We can focus on what we expect in life and what we don't have, what God allows us to have, the pain, the suffering, the loneliness, the lack of relationships, whatever it is, whatever gets us down. But I want to get to the point where we see how he responds to this in a proper way. In the very familiar verses, by the way, and I've done a previous video on these verses, and I think they will encourage you. And I really hope to encourage myself today too. Through the Lord's mercies, we are not consumed. He's saying with all of this stuff going on, the fact that I'm still here to write about it is an indication that God's mercy has not run out. And for you and for me, wherever we are today, whatever's going on in the swirl of our lives, the fact that we are still here is a sign of God's mercy. You might say, I don't feel much mercy, but no, it is a sign. He could have destroyed us, taken us out long ago. So he says, through the Lord's mercies we're not consumed because his compassions fail not. His heart hasn't failed. We may not understand all of his actions, but his heart for us is secure. Reading on. Because his fashions fail not, verse 23. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. The Lord is my portion, says my soul, therefore I hope in him. Well, how did he get this? Everything he looks at is bad. He looks right, he looks left, he looks back, he looks forward. Everywhere he looks, it's just bad. In fact, the end of the book of Jeremiah ends with the destruction of Jerusalem and the people of Israel, the sons of Judah, being carried captive into Babylon, where they're basically made forced labor for the most part, living in that land, that foreign land, for 70 years before God does eventually restore them. But how does he get from that place to say, well, here's where he begins. How does he get to this place of some encouragement? First of all, he remembers, I'm still here. Start with that. I'm still here. God's mercies are intact. And I'm going to choose to believe in spite of what I see. And that might seem like, boy, that is a stretch, Jess. I mean, why would you believe in something you can't see? We live in a very skeptical world. We need proof. We've been told so many lies and had so many disappointments from other people and people who've tried to manipulate us. We wonder, why I need to see it first, but with God it's different. You're still here, and here's what he says. His compassions fail not. They are new every morning. I come back to this reality. I believe that God is good and he has my best interests in mind. I may not see it in today's activities. I may not see it in my life's record behind me. I may not be able to foresee it in the next step in my life. But indeed, he says, I'm here. His compassions, his heart hasn't failed. He says they're new every morning. There's something about the newness of a morning, a new day, a new chance, a new possibilities. We use this old saying all the time, just living one day at a time, just taking one day at a time. There's something to be said for that, but as long as we put into that day this confidence in God, he says, here's what I'm counting on. Great is your faithfulness. Lord, you promised things in your word. You promised me a future. You promised me blessing. You promised Israel a hope of restoration, which he was not seeing through his senses and through his intellect. But he knew it because God had told him that. So he says, your faithfulness is intact. And then it ends with this phrase, the Lord is my portion, says my soul. The Lord is what I need. My portion was like your inheritance, the thing you're counting on out there in the future to sustain me into old age or whatever. My portion, this blessing that's coming, my portion, what I need, says my soul, because it comes from deep within himself. And he says, therefore I hope in him, end of verse 24. I hope in him. Why? Because I just choose to believe in his faithfulness. I believe that in this day, his faithfulness is on display. The fact that this day exists is indication of his faithfulness today. And he transfers his confidence, or lack thereof, away from all the things he sees around him, all the troubles, all the problems, all the stuff of life that's got him down. And I think most of us could say, I've had it pretty bad, but I never felt like chewing on gravel. I've never felt like it's just everything I taste is bitter and all that sort of thing. But we've been pretty far down. But what he does is what we should do. Not get our confidence from what we see, what we hear, what we think, what we've experienced, but get our confidence on the basis of what God has said. Now some may say, that is utter foolishness, that's just pie in the sky, that's just wishful thinking, that's just denying reality. Well, for a person of faith, if you believe in God and you're one of his children, it's not pie in the sky. It's not taking your mind and kind of, doing a reboot back to the original factory settings where we don't know all this stuff. It's not just getting rid of thinking. It's thinking about the right thing and choosing to believe that what God says in this book, what God has said to you, what God said to Jeremiah, what God has said to all of us, that's where we find our hope. So I hope for you today, maybe you're not as far down as Jeremiah was, but I hope when you feel these kind of emotions that you can express them, you can identify them, but rather than that just pushing you away or getting you further down, that as you've experienced that grief and that hurt, that it will push you to the place to say, here's what I'm going to remember. Here's what I'm going to think about. I'm still here. The Lord's mercies are not consumed. In other words, they're not all used up. He has no more mercy to give. He has mercy. His compassions, his love for us does not fail, and his faithfulness is always on display every day. Great is your faithfulness. And then he comes to this place where then he expresses this back to God. And this, I think, is where everything begins to change in his heart and mind. Because he is now moved from his viewpoint to God's viewpoint, and because of that viewpoint, he can express to God his confidence. And then you're ready to live this day. Then you're ready to serve in spite of the hurts and all the tragedies and all the pain. So thank you for just letting me ramble on. We're doing this no script, no plan, just me, and the Bible, but I hope you were encouraged today. And I encourage you to read that full chapter of Lamentations 3, or read the full book. It's very brief. There's a lot of hurt there. We can relate to it, but there's a lot of hope there as well. So remember this. If you think of nothing else today, remember this. When you think of God, express to Him that His faithfulness is great and His mercies are new every morning. Thanks for joining me. We'll talk to you again real soon.